Lena always loved old houses, so when she found a worn-down Victorian home for sale at an unbelievably low price in the outskirts of Pine Hollow, she couldn't resist. The first night she moved in, it rained. Heavy droplets slapped the windows, and the wind howled through unseen cracks. While unpacking in the living room, she heard it, a soft tapping beneath the floor. At first, she thought it was the old pipes settling, but then came a whisper. Very faint, very deliberate. Lena. She froze, dropping the box she was carrying. The sound was gone. She laughed nervously. Maybe the loneliness was getting to her. Over the next few days, the house grew stranger. Lights flickered randomly. The radio turned on by itself, playing old, scratchy tunes from the 1940s. Sometimes Lena swore she saw shadows darting just at the corner of her vision. One night, while reading in bed, she heard it again. The tapping, directly beneath her bed this time, followed by a whisper so cold it felt like fingers brushing her neck. "Come down." Trembling, Lena got up, determined to prove to herself there was nothing there. She lifted the rug in her bedroom and noticed an outline of a trap door. Hidden, she pried it open. A steep wooden staircase led down into darkness. Against all instinct, she grabbed her flashlight and descended. The air below was frigid and smelled of damp earth. The flashlight flickered as she reached the bottom. A narrow dirt tunnel stretched ahead, the walls slick with moisture. Whispers floated around her now, indistinct and overlapping, as if dozens of voices spoke at once. She wanted to turn back, but something pulled her forward. At the end of the tunnel, she found a small underground room. Inside were dozens of child-sized chairs arranged in a circle. In the center, an ancient rocking horse, its paint peeling, rocked slowly back and forth. The whispers grew louder. She stepped closer and noticed something horrifying. Tiny handprints stained the walls, some fresh, some still moving. As she backed away, a hand shot out from the dirt floor, grabbing her ankle. She screamed, kicking free, and fled back up the stairs. When she slammed the trapdoor shut behind her, the floor seemed to pulse beneath her feet, angry. She packed her things that night, determined to leave, but the house didn't want her to. Every door she tried was locked, every window stuck. The walls themselves seemed to stretch, narrowing the halls, trapping her. She ran from room to room, heart hammering, until she ended up back in her bedroom. And there, standing by the open trapdoor, was a figure. Small, pale, eyes sunken deep into a face too young to be so twisted. The child smiled, revealing rows of broken teeth. "Stay with us," it whispered. The walls bled. The floorboards cracked open. Hands reached out. Lena tried to scream, but no sound came out. The last thing she saw was the pale child reaching for her face. The house was listed again a month later, even cheaper this time, waiting. It started the night the storm came. Aaron lived alone at the edge of Millersfield, surrounded by endless wheat fields. The old farmhouse creaked and moaned under the weight of the howling wind. As the rain hammered the roof, he heard a knock, not at the door, at the window, 3 sharp taps. Aaron hesitated. His nearest neighbor was miles away. He approached the window slowly, heart thudding. Nothing there, just the waving wheat and sheets of rain. He chalked it up to a branch or debris and went back to his chair. But the knocking came again. This time at the kitchen window, then the living room, then the back door. Always 3 sharp taps. When he mustered the courage to open the door, nobody was there, only the storm. He bolted the door and went to bed, convincing himself it was just the weather. At 3:12 a.m., the power went out. The house plunged into darkness. He heard footsteps in the hallway, slow, dragging footsteps. Aaron grabbed his flashlight. The hallway was empty, but muddy footprints stained the wooden floor, leading toward his bedroom. Panicking, he locked his door, pressed his back against it, and listened. The footsteps stopped right outside. 3 knocks on the door. He screamed, but the storm swallowed the sound. After a long, agonizing silence, he heard faint breathing, low, raspy, inches from him. He didn't sleep that night. When morning came, he found the footprints were gone. He left for work early, trying to shake off the unease, but it followed him. That night, as he lay trying to sleep, he heard something whisper his name from under the bed. He didn't dare look. Over the next days, things worsened. His reflection in the mirror started smiling when he didn't. Objects shifted places when he wasn't looking. At night, he saw the outline of a figure standing in the fields, staring at the house, always the same distance away, no matter which window he looked from. He called the sheriff. When they arrived, they found no signs of forced entry, no footprints, nothing. They said it was probably stress. Aaron knew better. The thing wasn't trying to break in, it was already inside. One night, he woke up to the feeling of someone sitting on his chest. He couldn't move, couldn't breathe. In the faint moonlight, he saw it. A hollow-eyed figure, face sagging like melting wax, mouth hanging open in a silent scream. It leaned closer until he could feel its cold breath in his ear. "Let me stay." He blacked out. When he woke, he was on the floor, bruises in the shape of fingers around his throat. Aaron packed his bags. He didn't care about the house anymore. As he drove away, he caught a glimpse of the farmhouse in the rearview mirror. Standing on the roof, silhouetted against the pale dawn, was the figure, watching. It never knocked again. It didn't need to. It was already part of him. It was supposed to be a simple camping trip. Danny, Lila, and Sam had driven deep into the countryside to find a legendary spot, a hidden lake that locals whispered about but never visited. Silent Lake, it was called. No one knew why. When they arrived, they found the place untouched. The water was glassy, dark, and so still it looked like black ice. No birds chirped, no insects buzzed. Even the wind seemed to die the moment they stepped out of the car. It was unnerving. They pitched their tents anyway. That night, around the fire, Sam told a story he had heard. Long ago, a town stood here. One night, everyone vanished. Only the lake remained. They say the lake keeps their souls. The fire flickered. Something splashed in the water. They turned, but there was nothing. Just ripples spreading across the surface. Lila laughed nervously. "Probably a fish," she said, but no fish lived there. At midnight, Danny woke to the sound of soft singing, a woman's voice sweet and broken. It was coming from the lake. Drawn by it, he stumbled out of his tent. The others were gone, or asleep. He wasn't sure. By the lakeshore, he saw a figure standing ankle-deep in the water. A woman in a tattered white dress. Her face was hidden by wet, matted hair. She sang without pause. Hypnotized, Danny stepped forward. The water was ice cold. When he reached out to touch her shoulder, she turned. Her face was hollow, her mouth a black void. She screamed, a soundless, shattering cry, and grabbed him. The world twisted. He fell into darkness. In the morning, Lila and Sam found Danny's tent empty. No sign of struggle. Just wet footprints leading from the tent to the lake. They searched the water but found no body. They called for him, screamed until their voices were raw. But the lake remained silent. That night, Lila heard Danny calling her name from the darkness. She ran out of her tent, only to find footprints leading toward the water again. This time, 2 sets, one hers, one not. She backed away, but a hand shot out from the water and seized her ankle, pulling her under. Sam ran after her scream but found only ripples, and in the reflection of the lake, he saw all 3 of them. Himself, Lila, Danny, standing beneath the surface, staring up at him, mouths open in a silent plea. He fled. He ran through the woods, through the endless dark, but no matter how far he went, he always ended up back at the lake. Silent, watching, waiting. The lake never let go. Now, if you find Silent Lake and listen closely at midnight, you'll hear the faintest singing. And if you answer it, you'll never leave. When the old Holloway house went up for sale, Ellie knew she had to have it. She loved abandoned places, and this one was perfect. A crumbling Victorian mansion hidden behind an overgrown orchard at the edge of a forgotten town. The realtor warned her, "No one stays there long. Strange things happen." Ellie laughed it off. She liked strange. The day she moved in, everything felt wrong. The house creaked constantly, even when the air was still. Doors she had closed would be wide open moments later. Mirrors fogged up with breath marks, even when she was alone. At first, she thought it was just an old house settling. But at night, when the moon rose and the orchard's twisted trees scraped against the windows, she heard whispering from the walls. Low, urgent voices she couldn't quite understand. On the third night, she found a door in the cellar she hadn't noticed before. A narrow wooden door, bolted shut with rusty chains. Scratched into the wood were the words, "Do not open." Naturally, Ellie wanted to open it. She fetched a hammer and broke the lock. The door swung open with a groan that sounded almost human. Behind it was a steep staircase spiraling down into darkness. The air that rushed out smelled of damp earth and something. Rotting. Holding a flashlight, she descended. The steps went on forever. At the bottom, she found a vast, circular room lined with mirrors. But the mirrors didn't reflect her. They showed other versions of the house, decayed, burning, flooded, each one worse than the last. And in each mirror, figures watched her. Faceless, shifting things made of smoke and shadow. She turned to flee, but the staircase was gone. Only a blank wall remained. Panic clawed at her. From the mirrors, the figures began stepping out one by one, surrounding her. Their whispers filled the air, thick and suffocating. "You opened the door. You belong to us now. Stay forever." Ellie ran, but the room twisted and changed with every step. No exit, no escape. Finally, exhausted, she collapsed in the center of the room. The figures closed in, their hands cold and clammy. The last thing she saw was her own reflection. But it wasn't hers anymore. It smiled cruelly, waving goodbye. When the police came weeks later, responding to neighbors' complaints about the smell, they found the house abandoned. Only Ellie's shoes remained by the cellar door. The door was sealed again, chains newer and stronger. But sometimes, on windless nights, if you stand in the orchard and listen carefully, you can hear a faint tapping from beneath the ground, like fingernails against glass, like someone trying to get out. Everyone in town knew the story of Camp Wrenwood. It had been abandoned for decades, ever since the incident no one wanted to talk about. But when Jason and his 3 friends found an old brochure in the library, promising pristine lakes, lush forests, and endless fun, they decided it would be the perfect place to camp for the weekend. They should have stayed away. The first sign something was wrong came the moment they crossed the rusted gate. The air was heavy, too still, as if the forest was holding its breath. The once colorful cabins sagged with mold and rot, their windows shattered like jagged teeth. But it was the silence that unnerved them most. No birds, no insects, nothing. They chose the least decayed cabin and set up camp. That night, sitting around a weak fire, they heard it. The faint sound of children laughing. At first, they thought it was the wind. But when they listened closer, the laughter grew louder, closer. Footsteps crunched in the undergrowth, running circles around them. But when they shined their flashlights into the woods, nothing. The next morning, their food was gone. Their gear was shredded as if torn apart by small, furious hands. Scratched into the dirt outside the cabin was a single word: stay. Jason wanted to leave immediately, but the others convinced him to wait until sunrise. That night, the true horror began. The air inside the cabin turned icy, their breath came out in misty clouds, and the whispers started. From the corners of the room, under the bunks, inside the walls, soft, childlike voices chanting in unison, "Stay and play, stay and play." Something scuttled across the floor, fast and unseen. The door slammed shut on its own, trapping them inside. Panic exploded. They banged on the walls, tried to pry the door open, but it wouldn't budge. In the darkness, small hands grabbed at their ankles, their clothes. Scratches appeared on their arms and faces, as if by invisible nails. One by one, Jason's friends were dragged into the shadows, screaming. When Jason finally broke a window and crawled out, he saw them. Dozens of pale children standing just beyond the firelight. Their eyes were hollow black pits. Their mouths stretched into grotesque, unnatural smiles, and they were waiting. Jason ran into the woods, blindly stumbling through thorns and mud. He didn't stop until he reached the gate. But when he turned back, Camp Wrenwood was gone. Only dense, endless forest remained. When he returned with police the next day, there was no sign the camp had ever existed, just an empty clearing. And Jason? He never spoke again. Only sat in his room, whispering 2 words over and over: stay and play, stay and play. Everyone in Mill Creek had heard about the house on Willow Lane, the one with the sagging roof, boarded windows, and the crooked, rusted mailbox that simply read, "The Crawfords." No one lived there. No one even walked past it after dark. Some said it was cursed. Some said something worse lived inside. When 17-year-old Ellie and her cousin Mark dared each other to explore it one stormy summer night, it felt exciting, dangerous. They thought it would be a laugh. They were wrong. The moment they stepped onto the porch, the door creaked open by itself. The smell hit them. Mildew, rotting wood, something else underneath it all. Something metallic. Blood. Inside, the house was a labyrinth of decaying furniture, peeling wallpaper, and water-stained ceilings. A coldness clung to the air despite the thick, humid summer night outside. They wandered deeper, laughing nervously, their flashlights flickering. But the laughter died when they found the first room. It was a child's bedroom, untouched by time. Tiny shoes lined up neatly by a tiny bed. A cracked porcelain doll sat upright on the pillow, its glass eyes staring straight at them. Then the doll smiled. They ran. Down the twisting hallways, deeper into the house. Every door they passed slammed shut behind them. The lights of their flashlights began to dim, no matter how hard they hit them. Mark tried the front door. It wouldn't budge. The walls seemed to breathe, in and out, with a wet, sickening sound. Then came the whispers. At first, they were faint, just soft rustling in the dark, but they grew louder, harsher. A single voice rose above the others, high and childlike. "You shouldn't be here." Ellie and Mark stumbled into what must have once been a living room. At the center was a large mirror, its surface cloudy with age. But when they looked into it, they didn't see themselves. They saw the Crawfords, a family of 5, standing stiff and silent. The mother held a carving knife. The father grinned horribly, his face split ear to ear. The children had no eyes. One by one, they lifted their hands and pointed at Ellie and Mark. The glass of the mirror rippled like water. Hands reached through, clawing at them. Ellie screamed as cold fingers brushed her skin. Mark grabbed her and they bolted up the stairs, looking for any way out. At the end of the hallway was an attic door. They yanked it open and scrambled up. Inside the attic, dozens of tiny coffins lined the walls. Each coffin had a name. Each name was carved into the wood, scratched deep and angry. The last 2 coffins were open, freshly waiting, and the names on them were Ellie and Mark. Suddenly, the attic door slammed shut. The only light came from the flash of lightning through a cracked window. And in that brief flicker, they saw the Crawfords, standing at the top of the stairs, moving closer. Ellie smashed the window with her flashlight. Mark pushed her through first, then followed. They landed hard on the wet grass outside. When they turned back, the house was dark and still, too still. They ran all the way home without looking back. The next morning, when they told the police, they were laughed at. There was no house on Willow Lane, they said. There had never been. All that stood there was an empty lot overgrown with weeds and moss. But that night, as Ellie lay in bed, she heard it, a faint knock at her window. When she looked, she saw 3 pale children smiling up at her, their mouths stretched wide, their eyeless faces pressed against the glass, waiting.